Hello YouTube, my name is Gabe Kaysen, and today we're going to be looking at whether naturalistic enrichment offers any real benefit over their unnatural counterparts. In both the management of zoological facilities and the marketing for pet-related products, there exists a strong bias against unnatural behavioral enrichment items. Not only are naturalistic toys marketed as better enrichment, but some zoological parks have banned their staff from using unnatural enrichment items like boomer balls or cardboard. The consequence of such decisions have limited keepers and pet owners alike drastically in the kinds of enrichment that they can provide to their animals, and often force caretakers to spend absurd amounts of money and time finding suitable enrichment. I want to investigate the justifications used for such restrictions and examine whether the data supports these claims. There exist two separate rationales for limited unnatural enrichment. The first argues that naturalistic BE is more engaging and beneficial to the animal, while the second suggests that naturalistic BE has a greater positive effect on guest or consumer perception of the animal's condition. Let's start with the justification that naturalistic enrichment is more engaging than non. While this subject has been vastly understudied when compared to effects on guest interpretation, the data has been pretty clear in terms of animal care. The amount of time manipulating a BE item is seemingly not impacted by the enrichment category, and time of possession actually increased with non-natural BEs. Similar results are found in studies between tendencies in their environment, in which animals are found to either have no preference between naturalistic elements and non, or to actually prefer the unnaturalistic components of their enclosure. We find no behavioral differences between animals raised surrounded by natural objects versus non, and some studies have even observed higher rates of socialization with unnatural BE items. There is a burgeoning body of quantitative research that has demonstrated that non-natural stimuli like computers, music, videos, and human interaction can provide enrichment opportunities that have incredibly beneficial outcomes for the animal's psychological health. By restricting access to non-naturalistic BE, the data shows that you are not improving quality of care, you may actually be hindering it. The only strong counter-argument that is used in favor of naturalism concerns a rate of suitable environments, and found that around 78% of naturalistic enclosures were categorized as suitable for the animal, while only 40% of the non-naturalistic ones were. But the problem with using suitability is that it is a poor measure for solely evaluating naturalism. There are a tremendous amount of confound variables that have influenced the results, and the main variable in this study is without a doubt the facility's budget. As a facility that cannot perform the financial upkeep to meet their standards will certainly not be able to afford more naturalistic environments. So it seems that there still lacks any strong empirical proof of naturalistic enrichment being more beneficial for the animal. The next rationalization was that naturalistic BE items create a more positive experience for the viewers, whether educational or simply their perception of the animal's welfare, and this is where producing conclusions from the data gets a little complicated. We have found that visitors will spend more time in an exhibit with a naturalistic setting and move more slowly through that exhibit than traditional ones. We've also found that newer naturalistic exhibits were more effective at improving visitor attitudes towards the animals in question, but the benefits seem to end there, as there was no effect on perception of the animal's welfare, nor on increasing visitor knowledge. Like our previous justification, it's also important to note that these are measuring the impact of an entire environment, and naturalistic environments are overwhelmingly more expensive and newer than their unnatural counterparts, and therefore it becomes hard to judge whether the naturalism is contributing or simply the newer, more expensive design. When we look specifically at how BE items alone influence visitor perception, we find a long list of naturalism having no effect. Educational message is not affected in almost all enclosure types. Perception of the animal's happiness is not affected in any. There is no effect on the perception of well-being. For the perceived naturalism of the enclosure, there is no effect in 3/4 of the enclosures, and in 1/4 of them, non-natural BE actually increased that perception. The only measure in which naturalistic enrichment outperformed non was in perception of quality of enrichment, where 75% of enclosures received a slightly higher score. So while there is some empirical evidence to support the idea that naturalistic BE is perceived as better and that it may help people connect to animals, we run the risk of having simply compared old exhibits with newer, more expensive ones, rather than the naturalism. In the scope of such a large confound variable, I find it hard to commit to either of these notions as facts, but even if we did, we know that naturalistic BE does not influence education, nor perception of happiness, nor perception of well-being, and surprisingly has a reverse effect of decreasing the perception of an enclosure's naturalism. So when we compare types of enrichment, we find that there is no effective difference to the animal between a BE's naturalism, with some even favoring the unnatural, and that almost all guest perception and education is unchanged by BE type, with the exception of quality of the BE, time in the exhibit, and improved attitude towards the animal, which in actuality may be caused by confounding variables like budget and newness. Given these variables alone, it doesn't seem like an entirely bad idea to prefer naturalism if it does affect guest experience, but we are forgetting the looming negative of foregoing non-naturalistic BE, which is that it harshly inhibits the amount of variation, complexity, and uniqueness that you can provide to your animal. Withholding the ability to significantly boost the psychological well-being of your animals is not acceptable when the rationale has such scant evidence to support it. So please, don't be afraid to use toys or enrichment that do not look natural. There is a surplus of data showing the benefits to enrichment, and whether you're a zoo or a pet owner at home, providing a variety of engaging activities for your animal is the key to peak mental health. And when it comes down to naturalistic versus non, there really is no difference. That's all for this video. I hope you enjoyed watching. If you want to learn more about other animal-related topics, make sure to click that subscribe button. My name is Gabe Kaysen, and this has been a Second Nature resource.